All right, I think we are live on Facebook. Namaste. Namaste, Rusty. How are you?
Very well, thanks, Jerry. Wonderful to see you again.
And namaste to all the people who have joined us on Facebook Live.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's afternoon in Zimbabwe, where in South Africa, where Rusty is based now.
Yeah,
And Rusty, it's a delight having you again on the Author Experience Season 5. And just to kind of give you and the audience a little background, we have been doing the author experience conversations since the 2020 COVID lockdowns. And this is season 5. And we began season 5 with Bishop Ria. Bishop Ria, who is part of the international peace movement and was responsible for facilitating the entire Oslo Peace Accords. And then we had Sanjay Jha last Sunday. Sanjay Jha is basically a politician from India, former member of the Indian National Congress, and now an author and a professional speaker. And that's Bishop Ria for you. And today we have Rusty Labuschagne. Yeah, Rusty, welcome once again, and we're looking forward to learning from your life story and the brilliant lessons that you learned, you shared in your book, Beating Chains, and the lessons that you share all around the world as a premier speaker on the professional speaking circuit. And next week we have another of our Mojosh Magnificent Seven heroes, who's been with us for a long time. He's also a school alumni. We belong to the same school, St. Xavier's High School in Bombay. Army war veteran, a war hero, somebody whose story is very inspiring and is being made into a movie called Gurkha in Bollywood or the Hindi movie world right now. So we've got a great lineup of authors and speakers for the next few weeks. And today we have Rusty Labushkagne once again with us. And I like the way you've included your Sena half's name in your Zoom profile, Rusty Labushkagne and Sandra. Uh,
yeah,
and and I see a lot of your pictures, and I know that what it is like to be away from the family for so long when you were imprisoned, and now I'm sure that you cherish and relish every moment of life and every moment of your relationships and time that you have with your near and dear ones. Anything you want to reflect on that?
absolutely, Jerry. You don't. It's not only the people that are incarcerated that go through hell. It's the people you leave behind, because
True,
they hold everything that they're doing, everyone they see. It's only you plucked out of there. So you're constantly reminded of their loss. Whereas we just dealing with getting through every day. They're living that whole thing the whole time.
true, true. And how's it going for you as a speaker?
Fantastic, Jerry. It's really taking off, I have to say.
Right.
Uh,
I see you doing a lot of speaking sessions all over the place. I sometimes listen in because I always find your story very inspiring.
it's the reward you get from making such a difference in people's lives, Jerry. A lot of people are going through hard times lately.
Right.
And when you come off stage and you get big grown men giving you a big squeeze and tears in their eyes, and you've made a difference.
True.
And a lot of people I really needed that today. Thank you. And those things, there's no value on them. Before prison, Jerry, I was a big fish in Little Bulawayo, going nowhere. And it was all about me, money, my empire, more and more. And now I'm a little fish in a whole wide world making a huge difference. And it's not about me, Jerry. It's about helping other people and making a difference in other people's lives. And I found a purpose in my life now,
Right.
Jerry. I had a purpose before. I thought that making money was what I was here for. I was very
Yes.
lost.
I
But
know. I
leaving a
know.
making a difference.
Yeah. There's a very old saying by the poet Rumi who said that the light always enters us from the deepest wound, right? And I always say this to people that the more you try to avoid suffering and pain and struggle, the more you are stifling your growth and development. because what suffering and pain does for us, what adversity does for us, it helps us to sharpen our saw and become much, much better versions of ourselves. Unleash our unlimited heroic potential, if I may call it that, since I write books of real heroes like you. And today I'm very happy to also announce to the people who are watching and people at large that we are inviting Rusty Labuschagne officially into the Mojosh Magnificent Seven family. And he's going to be a permanent speaker in all our live events that we are launching very soon with a team which is led by Silita Kizilbash and Silita Magalesh. We have several people in the team like Megha Desai and so on, and maybe Silita will join us. And of course, Rusty, you're also a Karmavir Award recipient and a Rex Karmavir Global Fellow, which is led by Itu Chopra. So you've been there. We should have you for the award ceremony this year. You know, the premise of the Mojosh Magnificent Seven oratory and storytelling experience is that in life, at some point and many, we all break, right? And in
Mhm.
that brokenness, most people give up and break down, game over. And there are few like you who persevere with resilience, with grit, with determination, and break through. Game on. And I think you're a living example of that, a living legend, if I may call you, but you're a living example of how you've gone through that mill, the grill, the drill, gone through the grind, suffered and endured huge pain emotionally, mentally, physically, with all the torture, etc., that was done to you. Being in prison for 10 years is not easy, right? And then being cut out from your family, and there have been times when you were confined in solitary cells because of whatever reasons, and I'm sure that you will share more light on that. So with that, I would like you to walk us through your life story, right from the days when you said that you were a very, very focused businessman who didn't give a damn about the world, to your transformation now. Because you know, Mojo's Magnificent Seven, we celebrate life leadership and learning to learn lessons, the science of resilience, and the law of transformations. You know, besides several other learnings from the Mojosh Inspirator learning framework. But over to you, Rusty. The virtual stage is all yours. 7 to 9 minutes. Tell us your story.
Okay. Jerry, I'm a fourth generation Zimbabwean. Coming from very humble beginnings, um, had a lot of trauma going through my life, and then ended up a very successful businessman and left school. Uh, I played a lot of rugby and I was very sport orientated. Then I went into business, borrowed money, flew my own aeroplane, had 4 safari camps, fishing resort on Lake Kariba. Everything was going fantastic until I was framed for drowning a fish poacher during the land invasion chaos in Zimbabwe. And against police evidence, without a body, and on presumptions, I was convicted of drowning a poacher that is still alive, and it's a well-known fact. Unfortunately, it got very political, and cut a long story short, I ended up spending 10 years in Zimbabwe's prisons. But it wasn't only 10 years taken from my life, Jerry. In my first 6 years, I watched over 2,200 guys die, mainly from malnutrition and disease. It was during the Zimbabwe dollar crash when there was no food outside of prison, never mind in there. The cells were 13 meters long by 3 meters wide. We were 79 guys in there. So each person had 13 inches, 33 centimeters marked out on the walls in chalk, and that was your space. We were packed like sardines on our sides with legs all crossing over in the middle. And we all faced the same direction. When you turned over, it was all together. And it's cushioning against the cold concrete floor. You'd fold 2 of your paper-thin, worn-out, lice-ridden blankets several times to fit your space, then cover yourself with a third one. And your clothes were wrapped around your toothbrush and toothpaste, or they'd get stolen, and that was your pillow. There's no furniture whatsoever in any prisons. Jerry, there's no beds, tables, chairs, cupboards, nothing. Not even a mirror. I didn't see my face for the first 8 years. It's just rows of faulty folded blankets and hundreds of well-used water bottles on bare concrete floors. In the first prison I went to, we were 1,000 guys. The second prison, 2,200 guys. third prison, 1,200 guys. We were only ever allowed to use to have one set of clothing at any one time. And when you come in, you issued a standard white short sleeve shirt and a pair of drawstring white shorts. Underwear was forbidden. After 6 months, you got a change of clothing. So, and there were no basins of taps in the cells. And we only had one set of clothing. So we had to wash our clothes in the cell toilets at night wearing a blanket, then hang them on the walls with smuggled book staples to dry by the next morning. In 2005, during the Zimdollar crash, Harare city ran out of water. For 3 years, while in Chikurubi maximum security prison, each prisoner was allocated only one plastic cup of water a day. 1 cup of dirty orange city runoff water from a nearby dam carried by farm prisoners. That was to drink, clean your teeth, wash your face, bath, everything for 3 years. And that's when guys really started dying. But there were, I mean, I could go on with the hardships that I went through, Jerry, but the life lessons I learned in there. And some of them I want to touch on, Jerry, is like the most important things in life cannot be bought.
True, very true.
Health,
I completely agree with you.
yeah, health, loved ones, and friends, in that order. When you're watching 2,200 guys die in prison, Jerry, you understand what your health means to you. And you know, there's a special unwritten code that bonds friends like we share in this part of the world. And that warm, caring, and considerate society we make up from all walks of life can never be you can't find it anywhere else. And it was those, you know, and I share thousands of wonderful memories with so many people here. And it was those memories and the endless generosity, consideration, and knowing what a fantastic bunch of people we still have left here that kept me going all those years in hell. Knowing that one day I'd be traveling around reminding people never to forget the value of your friends, because only when you have them all taken away do you realize what they mean to you. On the health side, Jerry, that was the value of my friends. On the health side, when you're watching 2,000 guys die, in 8 months, during the cholera outbreak of 2008 and 2009, in 8 months, 432 guys died. And we were 1,200 guys. That's more than 1/3 of us in 8 months. One weekend, 22 guys died. And that triggered something inside me about my health, Jerry. And I want to challenge everyone listening to us today to do a rain check on your health, because once your health is gone,
True, very true.
everything else in your life will have no meaning whatsoever.
Then it's a downhill ride. Downhill.
Yeah.
Yes.
And loved ones, Jerry. I mean, my sister gave up her career and sold her business just to feed me for 4 years. And I'm telling you, I wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for her. And that takes a very special person. And it just proves, you know, the warm home cooked food they brought it meant as much to me as the visits, the love and warmth that I felt from them visiting every day. So health, loved ones, and friends. And then, you know, Jerry, I was transferred to a farm prison after 8 years. So a bunch of us carefully selected to run a farm for the prison service. I was a tractor driver, and so I was in my element. But I remember the first evening sitting around an open fire on old logs and bleached cattle skulls, because everything was done on trust there. So there was no barbed wire and bars and all that. It was all on trust. And the first evening sitting there, you know, listening to all the stories from the old tribal guys there, reminding me of my youth, and the beauty of the sunset, the dancing flames, tranquil call of an archer, and the bright stars and the moon, which I hadn't seen for 8 lonely, long years. I didn't see a sunset or a sunrise either for my first 8 years. Now I appreciate the everyday little things in life, like a soft bed, a hot bath, a tasty meal, a spontaneous cuddle from a loved one, because those are the things you miss most when you have it all taken away.
Absolutely. And that's when you start realizing that the small things are actually the big things. And
Absolutely.
we as humans, and it is human nature for most of us, that we tend to ignore the small things without realizing that they are the big things. Because
Absolutely.
in our pursuit of materialistic gains, we forget that it's the family, the friends, our health, which actually is the most precious priorities of life. And there could be no bigger priorities than that.
Exactly, Jerry. You know, my children were 16 and 18 when I went inside.
Right.
And I've always been extremely close to them. It's a bond that I will cherish and protect to my dying day. And, you know, my son and I, we'd endlessly plan and projects and adventures and dream about making millions. And he
So,
was walking in my footsteps, loving every minute of it, ready to take on the world with his dad. And then I was ripped away.
right.
And my precious 16-year-old daughter, Sandy, and I had and still have an extraordinarily beautiful bond.
And
And it's,
that must have been a traumatic experience for them to be
you know,
kind of
Jerry,
cut away from you,
they
suddenly.
still today. It still affects them today. Yeah, when you have your foundation ripped away from you like that at
Right.
that tender age, it's very both of them. Yeah, they still battle with that, and it's
Right.
very yeah. You know, they went through first loves, crushes, dances, 21st birthdays, and entered the wide world, and I wasn't there to see it.
Right.
And it's an annoying feeling knowing that I'm their father and should have been there, but I couldn't be. And I
Right.
don't want anyone listening to this ever have to feel what I went through. Just
Yeah.
make enough time for your loved ones.
Yeah, and I
It's
think
so
that there's a beautiful life lesson over there because it was not a choice for you to not be there, but in this mindless rat race that we live in the world in, right? Many people who are chasing wealth and career tend to ignore their families, their children, and do not make the time for that. I sometimes in my training programs do the coaching wheel, and I ask
yeah.
people if you put career, wealth, health, family, wonder years of your children, and me time, downtime for yourself. What do you think most humans would choose? And most say wealth and then career, right? Without realizing that all the other things also need to balance. I'm not saying career and wealth is not important, but it's about a
Yeah.
balance, and that's something which you keep talking about in your book about how you learned balance while you were in prison. So can you elaborate on that so that people who are watching this can gain insight and learn some lessons from that?
All I'll tell you, Jerry, is the testimony of my first evening in prison. I had five of my own businesses and 54 guys working for me. My first evening there, lying on that floor, being bitten by lice, crammed together like never before. I lay there and I just felt relief. I thought they can do whatever they want. And I said to myself that night, I said, never again, if I get out of here, am I going to take on what I've taken on? Because I was working for everyone else, Jerry. My life was just, yeah, it was every second of every day. It was, and and I spoke to somebody, another guy who fell overboard on a scuba diving trip in the middle of nowhere, and it was 29 hours he was bobbing in the ocean, and he said to himself, "Oh, it's amazing that it was the same thing." He said, "If I ever get out of here," he was a big corporate guy. He said, "I'm never going back to that life again." We we form our own prisons, Jerry. Even when you're not in prison, there are ways in which we imprison ourselves. You know, sour business partnerships, badly selected careers, being possessed with money and ambition in the corporate world, even unhappy marriages. And it's only when you have your freedom completely taken away do you realize that in many ways you were actually in prison too.
Very nice, and that's a great insight, Rusty. I mean, it cannot be get more profound than that. What you're saying is that many people who think they are free, and in the mindless pursuit of wealth, career, fame, don't realize they're imprisoned in their own cage, in their own mind, because they are not being able to get that balance.
I've
That's how
never
that.
felt I've never felt as free today as I ever in my life. Never,
Super,
Jerry.
super. That's a
Uh,
brilliant insight. One of the biggest takeaways that we have in the Mojosh Magnificent Seven Experience, as we call it, because Rex is the platform that we've created to recognize fellows from all around the world, the Rex Karmavit Global Fellowship. And it's what people who attend the events call it, that it's a never before seen experience, because and it's something which will remain with us for a lifetime, because what we go and do is we share our stories of resilience, right, of how we have broken through rather than breaking down. And we call ourselves unstoppable, unbreakable, and unshakable, because no matter what we are up against, we won't break, we won't stop, and we won't get shaken, right? Now, from flying a plane to before you were imprisoned, and
uh,
being a high flying guy, literally and metaphorically, right, like you said, to becoming a very grounded person today, who
yeah.
has not only chosen to forgive and let go, but also chosen to put the past behind and move ahead into the future, settling down again with a partner who has brought in a lot of joy and happiness into your life. What do you think are the key factors which led to that transformation? What are those laws of transformation that you would kind of you know uh, share as a takeaway for our participants in the audience today?
Jerry, the single biggest lesson I learned in prison was forgiveness, true forgiveness. When I went to prison, the humiliation of being labeled a murderer and terrible conditions was extremely hard to deal with, as was the pain of my bitterness, anger, hatred, frustration, and revenge for what they'd done and were doing to me. I hated them bitterly. And initially, would lie there for hours, wishing every terrible thing on each of them in turn, the poacher, the police, the judge, the ministry, and all who were involved in my conviction. And then one day, I was struck by the realization that they'd all forgotten about me long ago. Here I was, consumed by the unfairness of it all, and they blissfully unaware of the evil I wished on them every day. In the end, I was only hurting myself. I was carrying all that in my head and beating myself up for nothing. Forgiveness was a huge weight off my shoulders, and I learned to live in the moment from then on. The past was too painful and the future full of unkept promises. So I just dealt with each day as it was. I learned to have faith because no amount of worrying was going to change what I was going through. And if you have anger or resentment towards anyone in any way, it will eventually destroy you, because that is what those emotions do. They steal from you. They steal happiness and freedom. But the other big takeaways, Jerry, is gratitude. We all want too much in our lives, concentrating on what we haven't got instead of being grateful for what we have. And for me, giving thanks to God every day goes a long way. For my health, a beautiful wife, a lovely home, running water, a soft bed, and so on. When there's no food and no water and people are dying all around you, you become grateful for the fact that you're still breathing. And another day is a blessing. When you lie in a cell with 78 other people and your breath is not even your own, gratitude suddenly has a different meaning altogether. Jerry, accepting that what I went through cannot be changed and being grateful for what it taught me has unlocked my vision for my future. So you're gonna battle to understand this, Jerry, but I thank God for my 10 years in prison. I honestly do, because I'm a better person now than I would ever have been had I not gone to prison. And if I look at my life, Jerry, I started off very humble beginnings, went to great success, flying across the world in private jets, mixing with billionaires, then being put through that nightmare and losing everything I've worked my whole life for. But it has prepared me for this calling. And that's why I thank God for my 10 years in prison, because I believe that I've been equipped with this testimony to help people. And like I said earlier, it's about helping other people now. It's not about me. And the satisfaction I get from that, Jerry, far outweighs the millions I was making before.
Oh, that feeling of sharing knowledge with people and helping them to see the light is priceless. I mean, there is all the fees we get as speakers cannot match that
No way.
gratification, right? Uh,
No way.
and,
I'm going to
and,
take the seas with you.
Yes, and I'm going to kind of go a little deeper into this because you spoke about forgiveness, right? And I always tell I was born in a family that practices Christianity, and many
Yeah,
people who practice Christianity, unfortunately, they all follow the religion, but they don't know what is the biggest teaching of Jesus Christ. And if you
yeah.
actually go back into the books and try to read what is Jesus Christ's biggest teaching, it is forgiveness. And yet, many people uh, find it very difficult to forgive, and many carry that hatred, that resentment, and that bitterness to their graves and beyond, right?
Yeah.
Without realizing that forgiveness not only liberates the other person, but more than that, it liberates us, right? It frees us, right? And again, because people are imprisoned in that cage of resentment, bitterness, uh, you know, um feelings of hatred. What are your thoughts on that? Anything you want to share on that?
Jerry, you can't bounce back from anything unless you forgive those who you believe have done you wrong. And only when you forgive and let go of the past can you be fully free to move forward with your full potential. And like you said, forgive, forget, and move forward, or retain, remember, and regret. The choice is yours. And if you say, I'll forgive, but I'll never forget, then you still remember and you'll never move forward. And I'm not saying forget the lessons learned from the incident. Just don't revisit the incident.
Right. You know,
Yeah.
coming to the science of resilience, which is what our Mojosh Magnificent Seven, or MM7 as we call them now in short form, stories are all about. And yours is a solid story of resilience. And resilience as a science, which is related to neuroscience today, has just kind of started gaining traction, right? I wrote an entire chapter for a university journal, which went to millions of students around the world in 2021, on what is the science of resilience all about. Because truly speaking, the MMM7 storytelling and oratory experience is rooted in the science of resilience. And you speak about resilience in your book, Beating Chains. You speak about resilience in forums where you speak, where you teach. What are your thoughts on resilience? Can you unpack that for us?
Resilience, Jerry, is not something that you're born with. You're born with fortitude. Resilience is learned. And I believe, Jerry, I had a very tough upbringing. I was sent to boarding school 200 k's away from home when I was 6 years old. Just imagine a little 6-year-old. And in those days, we have 3-month terms. We're only allowed to see our folks once at half term every 3 months. So I had and then I lost my dad at 12, turned our lives upside down. And I was a wild child, Jerry. I mean, drinking, fighting, poaching. I was wild. And I played rugby for the country, but and a lot of water polo, and they're both rough sports. And then the war environment of the Rhodesian Bush War. So I'm telling you this because my upbringing, I believe, prepared me for who I am today, and it played a huge role because boarding school all the way through my schooling life prepared me for what I had to go through. And so many people say, I don't. There's no one else that could have got through that. But I want to say something else about that, Jerry. Is not everyone is tested, and we all have. I don't want to sound arrogant, but we all have a hero inside us. But none of us, not many of us, are tested to see how far we can be pushed.
Very true.
And you know, one of the big things I remember, Jerry, is they when you go in there, they try and break you physically and emotionally.
Absolutely.
Um, your confidence, your spirit, your soul, everything. And they smash it, Jerry. I mean, when you talk to a God, the first thing he says, Garapasi, that means crouch down. You can't be at the same level as him. You've got to go down there, otherwise he'll totally ignore you. And the whole time I would say to myself, no, that's fine, but I won't lower myself to be affected by you. I'll be out of here one day. You're a prison guard. You will always be here. So they'd imprisoned my body, but I refused to let them imprison my mind. And if you can retain that strength Jerry, that the Lord has told you who you are. Don't lose that. Not through these people that, just prison guards. And the stuff that goes on in prison. I mean, the gangs and it's very, you have to read the book. It was
I know, and I've read it, yeah, and and,
10
and,
years.
and, and a lot from your book is what I connect with my favorite book, which I call my holy book because I am not religious, nor believe in any god. I'm not a believer, but if there's one book I believe in, which is my holy book, it is Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl, who
Yeah,
I think one of the dreams that I will die with is to have him on a conversation or a program. But I read the book at a very young age because, like you, at in my younger days, I was a rebel without a cause, rebel without a pause. Complain about everything, whine, whimper about everything, and be a rebel for no reason at all. I mean, because I was escaping from life. You lost your father at 12, I lost my father at 8. And I completely agree with you that resilience is a layered theme and subject to learn because it's when life pushes you, and when you push life back is when you start building that resilience, right? And I always tell people, parents, leaders who I work with, that don't try to protect your children and
mm,
only prepare them for a life of comfort and luxury, because you don't need to prepare anyone for living a life of comfort and luxury. That's easy. What you need to
yeah,
do is prepare them for adversity, prepare them for suffering, prepare them for pain, because no one can escape that. You could be the most powerful person in the world, you could be the most wealthiest person in the world. There is no escape from when suffering strikes or when pain strikes. And if you're not prepared for that adversity, if you have not faced those traumatic experiences and emerged stronger and stronger, then when that big adversity happens, it breaks you down completely, right? And I think the thoughts that you shared on resilience resonate with what I wrote in The Science of Resilience. Yeah. Because how do you kind of ensure that, time and again, you are taking pain and suffering and using it as a life lesson, a learning experience, that how do I emerge stronger from each of these incidents, right?
yeah,
And the point is, at some point or other, it's okay to be a rebel without a cause and rebel without a pause, because then you can transform yourself to rebel with a cause, right?
yeah.
And I think that's what you and I have done with our own lives today. Any regrets going past? I have none, and I'm sure you have none too, right? Because it has made us who we are, like you said today, right? And I think I'm happy to be where we are today. I'm sure you are too, right? So thank you for sharing that. I don't know if you read Viktor Frankl's book. You must read it. And one of the big learnings in the book is he says that what helped me to come out of the worst Nazi camp at Auschwitz is that I realized that they could torture my body, they could abuse me, they could do what they want to me physically, but they cannot take away my dignity and they cannot take away my mental resilience and strength. And he says the why which formed in my life, the purpose, my purpose, the meaning of life, that when I come out of here, I'm going to devote my life to working with youngsters, working with the youth and teaching them the meaning of life, right? He says that purpose kept me alive, because every time I thought about giving up, I would remember that I have a huge purpose to stay alive and get out of here. So he refused to die, he refused to give up to the soldiers, and he refused to stand in that line which you could choose to stand in to go to your death, right? And in that process, he created a very powerful science called logotherapy, which is now an integral part of NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. And he says that while they were torturing me, I would transfer my mind, right, into a dinner with my wife, and he didn't know at that time that they'd already killed his wife, or into a classroom where I'm giving eloquent education to youngsters, and I would not feel the pain. And today they've done open heart surgeries and even brain surgeries simply by while speaking with the patient. So that's the power of the human mind if you can really harness it. Any thoughts on that?
Jerry, that part in his book, if I remember correctly, he said that he always knew that he had a date when he was going home,
Right.
and that's what kept him going. He could
Yeah.
get through all of that.
Yeah, and if you remember what the soldiers would do to break your spirit, they would tell you, Rusty, or they would tell you, Victor, you're going home on the 20th of March. And then on the 20th of March, they would tell you, oh, we were just fooling with you. Because that is a way of breaking their spirit. Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And Jerry, for me, it was all about hope. So, hope is like the anchor of your soul. It's what kept me sane and grounded in there. Um, to be able to find positives in all the negatives going on around me brought hope. And hope is the light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely.
And if let your hopes, not your troubles, shape your future. And don't look for hope outside of yourself. To find it, you need to look within. If you said to me in year 1, you're going home in year 3, I would have said never. I'm going home now. Like 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks I could live with. Anything beyond that was too painful. I counseled myself on how to think through the physical impact my thoughts had on me. If I thought about my fiance with another guy, or my mates on fishing trips where we went every year, or trips to Vegas where we went for conventions, that pain, that pain would come in my tummy, and I'd immediately block it off and then find that peace within. And finding happiness, even the smallest things that happened in prison, kept me healthy. Those who couldn't died. Life in prison or in Las Vegas is still just life. It's what you make of it, no matter where you are. I had everything I could ever wish for, and in moments, it was all gone. So for me, Jerry, hope was massive. Hope was a very, very important part of getting
Right.
through there.
And like you truly said, that hope enables you, empowers you to know that there is a future, there is a life ahead of me, and I
Yeah.
can see light at that end of the tunnel. Of course, you also need to hope that that light is not a train coming at you. So, on a lighter note, yeah, okay. So, in your books, in your talks, I always listened into you, read about how you speak about how one can find the inner strength.
Mm.
Do you want to throw some light on that for all the participants in the audience? How can one really find their inner strength and harness that?
Yeah. Jerry, I was as far away from the Lord as I could, as it gets, before I went to prison. I didn't need help. Only those that go to church and pray, they need help. And then I ended up on death row, Jerry, from a cell phone misdemeanor, and they wanted to break me. And they locked me in a cell. The death row cells were 3 meters by 1 meter and 3 meters high. And the dark cell, they called it the dark cell, there was just a vent, and the vent was covered by a staircase, and the electric light didn't work. So it was pitch black in there. And they'd put people in there when they wanted to break them. And I'd made a story that I used the guard's phone to phone. One of my old girlfriends wrote a letter to me saying that, so nice talking to you on the phone the other night, you sound so positive. And so they did a search and they couldn't find my phone. And I had hidden it, but they didn't find it. Anyway, I was put on death row to break me. And on day 6, Jerry, so they make you strip naked. They give you 3 blankets, worn out, lice-ridden, filthy blankets, a 5-liter container cut off at the top as a toilet, same as solitary. I was in solitary confinement for 2 years as well. That was another story. Also a cell phone story. But, and that remind me, Jerry, that's where I started writing my book, with my cell phone. So we'll get to that. But on day 6, in that dark cell on death row, so I was allowed out 5 minutes in the morning to clean my teeth, 5 minutes at 10 o'clock to have a shower, 5 minutes at 3 o'clock to prepare for lockup. So I was locked in for 23 hours and 45 minutes a day in a dark cell, like being buried alive. I couldn't even see my hand. And on day 6, I got on my knees and I prayed. And I'll never forget the feeling of like warm water being poured over me and a total sense of calmness. Now, I'd got lost during the war, Jerry, when I was 18. during the Rhodesian War, sure. And I never prayed in my life before. And I got lost there, and I was in a very serious, bad place alone. It was getting dark. And I prayed for the first time in my life on that mountain. And I had this feeling. And I was guided to finding 2 tracks from Uncle Chota Kudubul there during the rains the year before, followed those, and I finally got out. And it's not developed there, it's totally undeveloped land. So it was like a miracle, like you can't believe. And I didn't appreciate it back then. And I never told anyone because I thought they'd think I was crazy or weak or something. So when that feeling on death row happened again, I knew exactly what it was going. I just knew. And I sat on the floor leaning against the wall. And within 30 minutes, I faintly heard one of my friends shouting from the soccer ground, "Hey, Russ, everything's okay, my mate. Don't worry, everything's okay." So I jumped up. I said, "Hey, Phil, don't worry, Russ, everything's okay." So I lay down on the concrete looking up the doctors. Within 10 minutes, they unlocked my door. And those locks, that noise goes right through you. Chuck me my clothes. That the officer in charge wants to see you. I go out into the blinding sun. I've been locked in that dark hole for 6 days. Across the courtyard, up the stairs to his office. And his exact words were, he said, "Hello, Russ." I said, "Hello, officer." He said, "Have you remembered the girl's name yet?" I said, "No, officer." He said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it in God's hands. You can go back to your cell." And at the exact moment when I was praying, a sister was paying him $200 to get me out of there. And that was a huge turning point in my spiritual walk, Jerry. When I forgave them in my first year, because I was full of anger, hatred, and bitterness. It was draining me daily. And I remember walking that exercise yard, and I just looked up and I said, "Lord, take care of them. What goes around comes around. They'll get what they deserve." And once I accepted that, my life in prison changed. And there was a spiritual feeling to that, because it's exactly what you said. The amazing thing, it wasn't a gradual process, Jerry. It was an instant mindset decision that I felt on the inside. And forgiveness doesn't change the person that hurt you. That forgiveness changes you, like you said. And I felt it. It was instant, and there was a spiritual connection to it. So when that happened on death row, and yeah, and then I knew. Then I just knew there's a bigger power than this. And then I started looking into it more and reading more. And I tried to read the Bible before, and probably a King James version. It was like didn't make any sense to me. And my spiritual walk with Jesus Christ, Jerry, he's just everything to me in every way, in everything I do. And it's changed my life completely. And,
Very nice.
and I believe that the closer I get with him, I don't believe it, I know. The closer I get, the more bookings I get, the higher things are going, Jerry. And it's taking off, and he's right with me the whole time. And I know it's him. I
Very
know.
nice.
Just a feeling I've never had. I've never had this peace. I've never handed stuff over. And when you grow up without a father, Jerry, you all relate to this perfectly. You sort of build a wall around you because you've been hurt. So you don't let anyone
Right.
in. And you don't trust anyone. So you're so scared of trusting other people for disappointment, for being rejected, because you've been rejected. You had your dad taken away. And I never had a mentor, Jerry. I thought, no, I'll do it myself. I want to prove to people that I can do this. And that's
Absolutely.
how I grew up until I found Jesus. Now I've finally been able to let go. And he's my father. He can take care of all that stuff. And that changed my life. The peace, it's unimaginable, Jerry. And the more I let go, the more comes in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you've been redeemed.
Yes, I have.
And I think that redemption is priceless, right? Because it kind of again gives you shows you the path, helps you to create your own path. I've been telling you about the Mojosh uh, learning that we've created. This is the Mojosh framework, yeah. And Mojosh Inspirator is the name of the book and the name of the learning framework. And there are basically three mindsets. Mojo is that you have unlimited potential within you. You need to understand it and you need to feel it, right? You need to embrace it. Second is Josh, that you need to have the courage, the bravery to stick your neck out and unleash that potential. And third is Inspirator, where you need to become like Jesus Christ or Rusty Labuschagne to inspire others that they can also find their mojo and their Josh and inspire others. Because the more you inspire others, the more you inspire yourself. I truly believe that, right? Now, if you had to look at that framework and you can see several principles, guiding principles of humanity over there, which are the principles which, if I asked you to choose, like, 9 principles from that entire framework, what would you choose and why?
Wow, Jerry. Love is huge one, eh? For me. There's not enough love in the world, Jerry. So that's number one for me.
Love.
Yes,
Okay.
love. Um,
And how would you clarify that feeling of love? I mean, how would you explain it? What is the why? Why is love important for you?
I'll give you a small example, Jerry. When you're lying next to your wife early in the morning and you can see two things. You can see her messed up hair, puffy eyes, um, or you can see this beautiful profile, lovely eyelashes, you know, perfect skin. So for me, I think that we've I don't know if it's been trained or just used to looking for too much negative stuff because we have so much of it thrown at us from the media. And for some reason, people thrive on that negative stuff. We wired with love naturally.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So why is there not enough love? When you meet somebody, you should look at them as how can I, love this person? Not in a physical way. Instead of
Yes.
looking at them and saying, oh, look at that dress, or I wonder how she had her hair done like that, or, that.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with you, because love is not just about loving your family or your spouse. It's about bringing love into every space, right? It's about how can you love your friends, how can you love your animals, how can you love nature itself, and that's the way we've explained it in the book also. What would the next one be, Rusty?
Jerry.
I know you need to strain your eyes. That's the
I think
idea.
honesty, honesty is the big one for me, Jerry.
Honesty, yes.
You know, one thing that I never lost was my reputation. It always meant the world to me. It's something that I hung on to. But I think it's from losing my dad so young and trying to find my identity. So I always wanted people to love me. I hated enemies. I didn't want. I know it's not a clever thing, but I didn't. I didn't like people not to like me. But that brings you into alignment as well, not to do things wrong. Because if people see you're a righteous person, they'll be attracted to you. How can you be the leader of a company with 54 employees and you having an affair on the side? They're going to see that. They're
True.
going to say, this is trash that we're working for. And how are you going to command respect from somebody who's a leader and he's leading you? So honesty and trust and loyalty, they all work together. And I
True.
think there's not enough emphasis in the world on honesty, reputation, trust, loyalty.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, you need to be honest with yourself, right? Because you can probably lie to the whole world, but you know who the person in the mirror is. Yeah.
You sleep
So,
better.
yeah, absolutely. What would the next one be?
Courage. Courage is a big one, Jerry. Oh,
Okay.
I think that too many people are too scared, too scared to take on things.
Right.
And one thing I realized standing in that courtroom, leading up to the trial, to the judgment, I didn't know what they were going to do because I was
Right.
told I was going to prison, and I never believed it. I mean, when you're innocent, you don't believe you're going to prison. There's no ways.
Right.
So there's all this anxiety and stress going on, and as soon as they said convicted, it was a relief, Jerry. Then I knew where I was.
Right.
Now I can deal with this. I know, and I know where I am, and I know what to tackle now.
Mhm.
And I mean, it didn't work. I had all the lawyers and everyone, and it was all blocked by everybody. So and that's okay. But it, at least you know where you are. It's the unknown, and I think that courage is something that empowers people to take a step into the unknown. Too many people are
Abs-
comfortable with their everyday life. Well,
Absolutely. And
it's very boring.
uh,
If you want a character,
mm,
you got to take steps of courage into the unknown, and that's how you
absolutely,
grow.
absolutely.
How else are you
A-
going to grow?
and bravery is a part of courage. So if you see the framework over there, courage is one of the virtues, and bravery, perseverance, and honesty are part of courage. Because to be honest, also you need courage, right? To
Uh,
accept that you've done something wrong is also honesty, which needs courage, right?
yes,
And
yes,
to persevere, you need courage, and to stick your neck out, which is bravery. So you'll see the symbols. We have the turtle and the giraffe over there, right? To stick your neck out, to make progress, or to go for the sweeter fruits, which are higher than the low hanging fruits, which most people try to accomplish faster, right? Without realizing that the fruits of patience and that courage to go for the higher fruit is what gives you more yield. uh, you know
yeah,
the if you see the entire framework, you would see that we've kept another virtue right outside, which is vulnerability. And
see that?
in your journey, from and if you see this is the other visual that we have in our book. You would see
Yes,
that that's the missing piece. And if that missing piece of the jigsaw, vulnerability, is missing, then everything else does not work, right? Now, a lot of people in the world think vulnerability and humility are weakness. What they don't realize is that the arrogance and ego is weakness, but vulnerability and humility are actually powers. Now, in your journey from being that high flying Rusty, right, to the earthy Rusty today, who's absolutely grounded, right? Do you think vulnerability has played a huge role in that transformation? And if
Jerry.
so, how would you unpack that?
So when I look at my life before prison, I see that my life was being controlled by um, ego, power, and money,
Right,
and it, that's arrogant, totally. And when I look at it now, it almost gets embarrassing because I never did enough for the real things in life. The real things being having a purpose. Are you going to make a difference to this world, to these people on the planet, or are you just going to be all on your own, having a blast for the rest of your life, and then dying, and then what you're going to take with you? All your money or your airplane or whatever. So for me, um, I never felt vulnerable, Jerry. I thought, yeah, you can call it arrogance. I thought that was bulletproof. I thought, I'm flying high. I can jump anything.
the
And I,
bulletproof the bulletproof monk. Okay.
I but that also, Jerry, that also gets you to your success. If you don't, if you remain vulnerable all the time, and you could, you start condemning yourself because you can't do this and you can't do that, that's going backwards. I
Right,
think that, yeah, for me, I'd take on anything. I have this belief that put the boat in the water and then we'll learn how to drive it.
right, right. And I'll share my notes on vulnerability with you, because and why I say vulnerability is a power. You've actually kind of answered that in your own few words, which is vulnerability helps you to keep an open mind, right? That anything is possible. At the same time, many things which you don't wish are also possible. So while you plan to accomplish the best, you also prepare for the worst that could happen. And I think that's what a lot of people don't do, because they think that they are, undefeatable, right? But any good player, and you played rugby, any good player, any good game player, whether they play basketball or football, they would
Yeah.
always feel that little vulnerability when they're going into play, that I could lose. And that vulnerability gives you the edge to put in your best, because you don't want to lose, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I can speak on this for hours, so I, I won't take the time, but I'll share the notes with you. But like I said, you face that journey where you said that there was a time when you were on that mountain and you had to surrender to the higher power, right? Whoever that may be, and that led you out of that's vulnerability, right? When you let go and you say, okay, so be it, so be what is there in my destiny. Now that is understanding the vulnerability, but at the same time, like you said, you don't want to be vulnerable that my destiny is written by somebody else. You want to take charge of your life.
yeah.
You want to create your own destiny, because at the end of the day, like it is said in the poem Invictus by Henley, that I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my destiny, right?
Mm.
So finally, coming to your book, Beating Chains, and over here I want you to share, because we are going to take this as tutorials for young children who we are teaching how to write books in what we have just launched 2 days back, which is the Rex Karmavir Global Student Storytelling Fellowship. So, students from class 5 onwards, we are encouraging them to research and write real stories of real heroes, true stories of real heroes. And you've written your own book after coming out of prison, which is called Beating Chains. You know, and I'm just going to show you the tutorial that I had shared with you. Uh, Major Brar must have shared it with you in the email, right?
It did.
This is what Joseph Campbell calls as the hero's journey.
Yeah.
I do use this framework, but I know a lot of writers, authors who don't use this framework, right? And if you see the framework, it is, I'm living an ordinary life. There's a call to adventure, right? Which is your second part. There is a early refusal, which is, no, I can't do this, right? Then you have somebody who kind of supports you, mentors you, or nudges you to kind of go for it. And you cross that threshold, and you kind of put your allies and enemies, who could be your foes, who could be your friends in that journey, and then you have the approach. And several books have actually kind of employed this to kind of get their stories in place, whether it's the Odyssey, whether it's Harper Lee's best-selling book, which is To Kill a Mockingbird, in which Atticus Finch, I don't know if you read To Kill a Mockingbird, but it's also a very popular movie available on some of the OTT platforms, with the one and only Gregory Peck, who plays Atticus Finch. And Atticus Finch's challenge is that he has to now, in the United States of America, which was anti blacks at one time, and you had the Ku Klux Klan in a state like that. In that era, he has to defend a black man who has been accused of killing and raping a white girl. So that's the story. So, do you want to share in 5 to 10 minutes about how you went about writing your book? What are your tips? What are your nuggets of wisdom for future aspiring writers?
Jerry, first of all, it's very simple to write a
I
book.
also want to know and share with the audience why you call the book Beating Chains.
Okay. Well, let me start with that. The beating chains is okay, why I did it. When I went to prison, Jerry, I realized how much injustice there is. There were a lot of innocent guys in prison. It was terrible. And you know who's innocent and who's not. It doesn't take long. Um, so the justice system is a mess. And I watched 2,200 guys die in my first 6 years. And we estimated, between the inmates and I, from transfers from other prisons and guys going out, that during that Zimdala crash, 15,000 prisoners died. And I wanted that someone must be accountable for that, Jerry. I mean, you can't just sweep that under the carpet. I mean, guys, they were dying every day. It was, so I thought, no, I need, and also to try and make a difference in maybe not only in Zimbabwe, but in Africa in general, and maybe in the rest of the world. The conditions in prison, you're not rehabilitating anybody. There's no incentive to behave in prison. There's no TV, there's no radio, there's no privileges whatsoever. The only entertainment you get, you play soccer and volleyball, but you're locked up for 20 hours a day. You've got to feed, you get fed twice a day. during those 4 hours out. So that takes another 2 hours. So basically, you've got 2 hours to do some exercise. So you're locked up for 20 hours a day, and the only stories or entertainment in there, stories from hardcore armed robbers telling you where to buy guns, how to buy, yeah, how to break into different cars, how to break into houses. It goes on, story after story. And you got these young guys listening to all this that maybe they're there for arson or stock theft or rape or whatever it is. And they come in there non-violent crimes. I'm not saying rape's not violent, but a lot of our rape cases were unconsensual sex. Under 16 is rape in Zimbabwe. And if you accused of rape in Zimbabwe, 99% of the time you're going to prison. And that's minimum 8 years. So most of those guys went to maximum security. And 60% of the prisoners in the prisons were rape cases. And most of these guys, stock theft was the second biggest one. They're not violent guys. They're not used to crime. And they're learning all this stuff. So when they go out, the beatings were horrific. So they're beaten, they're resentful, bitter. When they go out of there, educated, and they know what gang to go to join, where to buy guns, everything. So we're breeding criminals, worldwide. And I wanted to try and change that, Jerry. But there are people you won't change, Jerry. There were guys in there that, I would try and counsel a lot of people while I was in there. And they say, Russ, you're in the safari business. That's what you do. I'll live by the gun. I'll die by the gun. That's me.
Very
So
true.
there's no converting some of them. The best place for them is where they are.
Right.
Because a lot of
They,
the guys
they,
you don't want to see outside. I promise you, there's some hectic guys in there.
and they
But
don't want
getting
to. They don't want to transform. Yeah. Okay.
oh, well,
Getting into the process of writing a book.
yeah, writing the book. So I wanted to make a difference, Jerry. So, I started on a smuggled phone when the iPhone 4 first came out, when I was in the farm prison. I started messaging myself or emailing myself all these stories that I'd remembered. So that, the numbers of deaths, the dimensions of the prisons, just story after story. This one was stabbed then, and all the stuff that went on. 700 emails, Jerry. So when I got released, I had a bunch of stuff, but I was still too scared to write a book. And I had endless guys saying, Russ, let me write a book. Let me write a book. And because I had all the material, and I put some on Facebook, and it went crazy, like 700 likes in no time. And then, because I was worried about Mugabe still being there, because I was actually sentenced by him.
Mm-hmm.
There was a judge involved. He was put in prison. It was very ugly. So when he left, I thought, no, then I'm going to write the book. So I wrote the book, and it sold, I think, almost 8,000 copies now. And I did it myself, Jerry. Self-publishing. I did a talk in Singapore, and I heard a publisher speaking there. It was a speaker that self-published a book, and she spoke about the merits of self-publishing against using a publisher. And there's no money whatsoever from writing a book and giving it to a publisher. You make nothing, maybe $2 a book. It's crazy. But self-publishing, you just hire an editor to go through it. Definitely a proofreader, because when you're too close to a story, you miss a lot of that stuff. And then I self-published. It is as simple as that. Get on Grammarly, get Grammarly, the premium. It'll tell you all your mistakes as much as you want, rewrite some stuff, but keep your own voice. I think it's important that when someone reads it, they must hear you coming through, the way you think, the way you speak, the way you tell a story. And I always, emphasize that in my, and then, then the printing. It's so simple. Everyone wants to help you. And then, the talks that you do, Jerry, it's so easy to become a speaker. And many people, they just hold your own audiences, and people, you hear your story. It's an emotional buy. You have books there, and they come and just sign it off, and it's rewarding, and it's therapeutic, if I can put it that way, Jerry.
Very
When
true.
you see the feedback from people reading your book, and yeah, how they've changed so many people. And
Right,
yeah, book is selling like crazy now.
right. Well, that's wonderful, and congratulations. And so how did you kind of segregate the chapters, and how did you plan how the flow would be?
Jerry, I got an editor to do that. So I wanted it to flow. Well, you got to grab them first. So the first
Right.
thing is the first 2 pages, the guy's got to read it and say, okay, now I can read this. Now, where I'm lucky, Jerry, if I'm writing a story about a bar in Texas, or we've been into thousands of bars, if I'm writing about a maximum security prison, no one knows about that. So there's immediate interest in that. So don't start the story with some thing. Now I grew up over here and I went to school over there. They're not interested in that. They want to know that hardcore stuff, how you walked into prison naked, what it felt like,
Mm,
slept on the floor, the lice eating us day and night,
right.
those things in the beginning. So you grabbed somebody, and then they want to know very soon after that, well, how did you get in there? So
True.
you've got to then quickly change it and go to the incident, then go back telling a story in prison to someone else about about different things in prison, and then someone will ask you, well, tell us about you, where you come from, and you jump to that, where you're telling somebody, no, fourth generation Zimbabwean, cattle ranching background, played rugby for Zimbabwe, blah blah blah, and so you jump, say, Jerry, so you keep the interest there, and then of course people want to know about the court case. What happened in the court case. So you have pieces of the transcript in there, proper stuff, exactly as it was, how much injustice there was. People want to know that. And of course, the best part, Jerry, is the end, where people want to know how you've transformed. What, how how much you've changed in your life, and what life lessons. Because half my book is life lessons and what I learned. When you push so deep that you have to dig really deep to find solutions to get through there, you grow. You learn lessons others never have to. As long as you can take the good and leave the horrors behind. And those life lessons, Jerry, are what are changing people today.
Very
And
nice.
the more I speak, the more I remember different things that came back to me and how I overcame different things. So yeah, it's wonderful, Jerry.
Brilliant, brilliant, Rusty. And thank you for those life lessons. And thank you for sharing your knowledge so abundantly, because a lot of people in the world find it very difficult to share knowledge abundantly because, they always feel that they will lose their power or the dependency of people on them when they share knowledge abundantly. But I always say that the more you share your knowledge, the more your knowledge grows. So thank you so much for all those wonderful lessons. Thank you for helping and enabling and empowering people to find their inner strength, to understand resilience and how they can face any adversity and come out of it a winner. Thank you for being Rusty Labuschagne, and thank you for being a part of our Mojo's Magnificent Seven oratory and storytelling experience. We officially welcome you today on board. And our first event is going to be somewhere in August or September. It's going to go to several thousand people around the world, not just our audience in India, but it's a hybrid audience. It's a hybrid event that we are planning, which is a on-ground audience which would be there at the live event, but the same event would be beamed into people's homes through digital broadcast. And looking forward to having you as a pivotal part of that family from now on and going forward. So thank you so
Thank,
much, and thank you for to everyone who participated on Facebook Live.
thank you,
Any
Jerry.
any last words that you want to share, Rusty? The stage is all
Of
yours.
course, Jerry, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it. And then the one last thing is the past only exists in your head. It can only come to life if you let it.
absolutely, absolutely true. Thank you so much, Rusty. And his book, Beating Chains, is available on Amazon. Please do go and buy it. Thank you so much. Signing off. Thank you to all of you for joining in. Take care. Good night.